Welcome to Monk's Temple, where the ancient whispers of wisdom meet the quiet of your evening, where the day's noise finally settles, and something deeper in you begins to listen. I'm glad you're here. Wherever you are, whatever time your clock shows, you have arrived at a place of rest. Tonight, we won't be going on a linear journey. Instead, we'll be sitting with different facets of the same quiet truth, like turning a well-loved stone in your hand, noticing how the light catches a new angle each time. The core of what we'll explore is timeless, drawn from the profound understanding of Buddhist masters across millennia. But the way we explore it, the stories we share, will be our own. You don't need to remember anything. You don't need to grasp any philosophy. Simply let the words wash over you, like warm water over tired hands. So, wherever you are, find a comfortable position. Let your body be supported. Perhaps notice the weight of your shoulders settling, the gentle rise and fall of your chest. And when you're ready, let's begin by simply listening to the sound of your own breath. In and out. There is a quality of mind that we rarely appreciate until it's gone. It's not happiness, exactly. It's not excitement. It's a sense of spaciousness. A feeling that there is room to breathe between your thoughts. That you are not crammed into the corner of your own skull, pressed up against urgent to-do lists and recycled conversations. This spaciousness is your natural state. It's the sky behind the clouds. And the practice of awareness, central to Buddhism, is simply the gentle art of remembering the sky. Let me share a story with you. It's not an ancient parable, but something from my own early days of learning. I was staying at a small hermitage, and my task for the week was to sweep the old wooden porch each morning. I approached it with a goal-oriented mind: sweep, finish, move on to the important meditation. One morning, frustrated that the leaves kept falling even as I swept, I complained to the teacher. He listened, then said, "You are sweeping to finish. Try sweeping to sweep." Puzzled, I went back. The next leaf that fluttered down, I stopped fighting it. I just watched it land. I felt the smooth grain of the broom handle. I heard the soft swish-swish on the wood. I noticed the pattern of the fallen leaves, a mosaic of brown and gold. In that moment, the chore vanished. There was only the sweeping, the sound, the cool morning air. The goal had been a tight knot in my chest. Letting it go, I found the spaciousness that was there all along. The task didn't change. My relationship to it did. And in that relationship was a simple, profound peace. If this way of looking at the world resonates with you, if you'd like to visit this temple for more such evenings, consider subscribing to Monk's Temple. It's a simple way to support this space of calm, and to be notified whenever we light the lantern for another gathering. No pressure, just an open invitation. We often believe peace is a destination. A place we get to when everything is finally arranged correctly, when the work is done, the conversations are resolved, the future is secure. Buddhism gently turns this notion on its head. It suggests that peace is not the absence of disturbance, but the presence of a certain kind of attention amidst the disturbance. It's the spacious sky, not the absence of clouds. Think of your mind as a vast, clear lake. This is its fundamental nature. Still, reflective, deep. Now, imagine winds of worry kicking up waves. Raindrops of memory pockmark the surface. The current of planning pulls the water in one direction. We look at this and think, my lake is turbulent. It is not peaceful. So we try to stop the wind. We try to catch the raindrops. We swim against the current. We exhaust ourselves trying to control the weather. The Buddhist path is different. It teaches us to dive below the surface. Just a few feet down, beneath the churning waves and the ripples, the water is still. It is always still. The storm is happening up there, but down here, there is quiet. You are not the storm. You are the whole lake, capable of containing both the surface weather and the profound stillness beneath. Your practice is not to stop the wind, but to remember how to dive. This understanding finds beautiful expression in the Buddhist symbol of the lotus flower. It doesn't grow in a sterile, purified pond. It roots itself deep in the mud, the muck, the messy, nutrient-rich darkness at the bottom. From that very mud, it draws the sustenance to send a stalk up through the murky water, until it finally breaks the surface and opens its petals to the sun, immaculate and untouched by the filth from which it came. Our challenges, our fears, our messy emotions, they are not obstacles to our growth. They are the very mud we are rooted in. They are the fertile ground from which our wisdom, our compassion, our ability to bloom into peace, can emerge. Without the mud, there is no lotus. Without learning to be with difficulty, there is no genuine tranquility. Let me tell you an original story about a potter and two students. In a village known for its ceramics, there was a master potter of unparalleled skill. He took on two apprentices. The first, Ananda, was diligent and careful. He hated mistakes. He would spend hours preparing his clay, sifting it until not a single impurity remained. At the wheel, his hands were tense, his brow furrowed, determined to produce a perfect vessel on the first try. The slightest wobble, a minute crack in the drying clay, would fill him with frustration. He would crush the piece and start over, his pile of discarded clay growing large, his finished works few and always bearing the subtle mark of stiffness that comes from fear. The second apprentice, Saman, was different. He would take his clay, impurities and all, and begin. His hands were soft on the wheel. When the pot wobbled, he didn't fight it. He'd simply smile, let the clay collapse, and begin again, learning the nature of that particular lump of earth. His workspace was messy, littered with half-formed experiments, lopsided cups, and bowls with unusual, organic curves. The master watched in silence for a year. At the year's end, he called them both. He pointed to Ananda's shelf of perfect, identical, slightly rigid pots. "You have mastered control," he said. Then he pointed to Saman's shelf, a riot of unique shapes, some polished smooth, others textured where the impurities had created beautiful, unexpected glazes. "And you," he said, "have mastered clay." Saman had made peace with the wobble, the crack, the impurity. He didn't see them as enemies to be eliminated, but as characteristics to be understood, worked with, sometimes even celebrated. In doing so, he found a flexibility and creativity that strict control could never permit. His peace was in the process, not just the perfect product. This is a cornerstone of the Buddha's teaching, the middle way. It is the path between rigid control and chaotic indulgence. It is Saman's gentle, knowing hands on the wheel. It is not about never having a thought of fear, but about not letting that thought harden into the permanent ceramic of your identity. The thought comes, you notice it. You let the wheel turn, and it passes. The pot takes a new shape. So much of our inner tension comes from living in a house of mirrors. We move through the world, and every surface reflects back a distorted image of who we think we are, who we should be, what we lack. We see the reflection of a person who is not enough, who is behind, who is flawed. We believe these reflections to be reality. We decorate our inner home with these funhouse mirrors, and then wonder why we feel so uneasy, so misshapen. The practice of mindfulness, so central to Buddhism, is the slow, patient act of taking down these mirrors, one by one, and replacing them with clear windows. A mirror shows you only your own face, trapped in its frame. A window shows you the vast, living world outside. It lets in light. It connects you to the sky, the trees, the movement of life. When a fearful thought arises, I am not capable, that is a mirror talking. It's a distorted reflection of a passing mood framed as truth. Mindfulness is the pause where you touch the glass and realize, this is a mirror. And in that realization, you begin to see it for what it is, a constructed object in the room, not the boundaries of the room itself. You can turn away from it. You can look toward the window instead. What does the window show you? It shows you the present moment, exactly as it is. The feeling of the breath in your nostrils. The distant sound of traffic that simply is what it is. The ache in your knee without the story about what the ache means for tomorrow. The window doesn't interpret, judge, or compare. It simply reveals. And in that clear, non-judgmental revealing, there is a profound relief. You are no longer arguing with your own reflection. You are simply aware of what is, both inside and out. The Buddha's genius was in outlining a path, the Noble Eightfold Path. That is essentially a guide to installing these clear windows, right view, right intention, right speech, all the way through to right concentration. It's a holistic blueprint for a life lived in clarity, not distortion. Let me introduce you to Kisa, a woman from a story I heard long ago. Kisa was a perfectionist. Her home was immaculate, her work flawless, her appearance always composed. She believed her worth was a delicate vase on the highest shelf, and her life's work was to ensure no tremor, no speck of dust, ever reached it. Predictably, she lived in a state of quiet, exhausting terror. One autumn, a great storm swept through her town. A tree branch crashed through her living room window, scattering glass and rain and leaves across her perfect floor. The power went out. The carefully controlled environment was suddenly a chaos of wind and water. Initially, Kisa was paralyzed with distress. Then, shivering in the dark, she had no choice but to act. She felt for a candle, lit it. In the small, warm circle of light, she saw not a catastrophe, but a task. She began to sweep, not to achieve perfection, but to create a dry space to sit. The wind howled, but it was just sound. The rain was cold, but it was just wet. Stripped of her ability to control, something else emerged, a practical, present moment competence. She patched the window with a board. She made a nest of blankets. And as she sat in her makeshift fort, listening to the storm, a strange feeling arose. It was peace. Not the brittle peace of control, but the resilient peace of adaptation. The storm had, in a sense, shattered her house of mirrors. And in the space where they once hung, she saw the raw, real night. She was okay. More than okay, she was alive, resourceful, part of the wild weather itself. After that night, her home was never quite as perfect. A slight draft came through the patched window. But she liked it. It reminded her of the night she discovered she was more than the vase on the shelf. She was the hand that could hold it, or set it down, or make something new from the pieces if it fell. We carry so many unseen rules. Invisible scripts about how life should unfold. I should be further along by now. They should understand me. This shouldn't be so hard. The word should is a quiet tyrant. It constantly compares our reality to a fantasy, and finds reality lacking. This constant judging is a source of immense, subtle suffering. The Buddha identified this as a key cause of our distress, our craving for things to be other than they are. Imagine you are a river guide. You have a map of the river. This is the should. It shows a smooth, wide channel with gentle bends. But you are on the actual river. Here, the channel is narrow there. A fallen tree blocks the expected route here. The water is faster, slower, deeper than the map said. If you cling to the map, shouting at the river for being wrong, you will be miserable and likely crash. But if you set the map down and open your senses, if you look at the actual water, feel the current, listen to the sound of the rapids ahead, you can navigate. You adapt. You work with the river, not against it. The map of should is useful for general direction, but the reality of is what you must actually navigate. Peace is found in the skillful navigation of what is, not in the futile battle against it. There is an original tale from the mountains I'd like to share. A young monk was assigned to tend the temple's ancient clock, a complex weight-driven mechanism that kept perfect time but required meticulous weekly winding. He approached it with reverence and anxiety, terrified of breaking this revered object. One day, his sleeve caught on the winding crank at the wrong moment. There was a terrible crunch of grinding gears from inside the case, and then silence. The great clock stopped. The monk was devastated. He had failed. He imagined the disappointment of the abbot, the shame. For 3 days, he avoided the clock room, sick with dread. Finally, he had to confess. Trembling, he found the abbot in the garden. "Reverend," he stammered, "I have broken the ancient clock. It will not run. I am so sorry." The abbot looked up from the rose bush he was pruning. "Is that so?" he said mildly. "Well, it was very old. Come, show me." They went to the clock room. The abbot didn't inspect the damage with a frown. Instead, he sat on the floor before the silent clock. He gestured for the monk to join him. "Listen," he said. For a long time, they sat in the quiet. The monk heard birds outside, the rustle of leaves, his own heartbeat. "What do you hear?" the abbot asked. "Nothing," said the monk. "The clock is broken." "Exactly," said the abbot. "For 50 years, I have known this room only by its ticking. Now, I know it by its silence. Both are its nature. The clock was not time. It only marked its passage. Now, it marks its passage in a new way." He turned to the young monk, his eyes kind. "The clock is broken. This is true. Your task now is not to undo that truth, but to learn from it. Tomorrow, we will open the case together and see what can be seen." The lesson was not about the imperfection, but about the monk's relationship to it. His should, the clock should keep ticking, I should not have broken it, had created a prison of guilt. The abbot's gentle acceptance of what is, the clock is broken, here is the silence, opened a door. It transformed a catastrophe into a curious learning opportunity. The clock was eventually repaired, but the monk was forever changed. He learned to hear the value in the silence between the ticks. This relates directly to another profound Buddhist concept, anicca, or impermanence. Everything that arises, passes away. The tick, and the talk. The whole, and the broken. The breath in, and the breath out. Our suffering intensifies when we demand that the in-breath last forever, or that the out-breath never come. Peace is found in allowing the natural rhythm. The clock was a beautiful lesson in anicca. Its stopping was not a moral failure, it was a manifestation of its nature. All compounded things are subject to change. When we make peace with this fundamental law, we stop wasting energy building dams against the flow of time. We learn to float. Let's explore a different kind of space, the space between stimulus and response. You receive a harsh email, that's the stimulus. The immediate, churning feeling in your gut is the first arrow, as the Buddha might say. It's natural. But then, there is a space. A fraction of a second. In that space lives your freedom. You can, in that space, choose to add the second arrow, the story of how you're disrespected, the rehearsal of your angry reply, the physical clenching that will give you a headache. Or, you can simply be with the first feeling. You can feel the heat in your face, the tightness, and just breathe into that space. You don't have to fill it. You can let it be spacious. And from that spaciousness, a different response may emerge, one of curiosity, clarity, or compassionate boundary setting. The reaction is automatic. The response is chosen. Your mindfulness practice is the guardian of that sacred space. I remember a man who came to a meditation group I was leading. He was a retired police officer, his body still holding the posture of alertness. He said he came because he couldn't turn it off. His mind was always scanning for threats, even in the safety of his own home. The first few sessions, he could barely sit for 5 minutes. One evening, during a walking meditation, he stopped dead in his tracks. Later, he shared what happened. I was following my breath, feeling my feet, he said. And for the first time in 40 years, I had the thought, that shadow looks dangerous, and I didn't become the thought. I just saw it. I said to myself, there's the old threat detector going off again. And it just floated away. I didn't have to believe it. I didn't have to act on it. He had discovered the space. For him, it wasn't a spiritual concept, it was a life-saving patch of neutral ground. He had spent a career reacting. Now, he was learning to respond, starting with his own thoughts. This is the essence of the Buddhist teaching on right effort. It's not the effort of grinding willpower, of forcing yourself to be calm. It's the gentle, persistent effort of returning to that space. Of noticing when you've been hijacked by a story, and softly, without self-criticism, escorting your attention back to the anchor of the breath, or the feeling of the ground. It's like training a puppy. You don't yell at it or punish it for wandering off. You just patiently, lovingly, bring it back. Again and again. That patience is the practice. Now, let's consider a new metaphor, the crowded marketplace. Your mind, much of the time, is like a bustling, noisy marketplace at midday. Vendors, your thoughts, are shouting. Worry here. Regret over there. Plan for the future. Remember that embarrassing thing. Customers, your emotions, are haggling, jostling, creating drama. It's overwhelming. You get swept up in the crowd, believing you are the marketplace. The practice of meditation is not about shutting down the market. That's impossible. It's about finding the quiet balcony above the square. You climb a narrow staircase, that's the discipline of sitting down to practice, and you emerge onto a balcony overlooking the chaos. From here, you can see it all. You can hear the shouts, see the commotion, but you are not in it. You are not being jostled. You have perspective. You realize, oh, that's just the worry vendor, shouting his same old slogans. And there's the planning committee, having a heated meeting. From the balcony, you don't have to engage. You can simply watch the market do what markets do. And in that watching, there is peace. You are the awareness on the balcony, not the chaos in the square. There's a story about a master painter who was commissioned to paint a mural of a peaceful countryside on a long, blank wall in a nobleman's hall. He worked for months, creating rolling hills, a meandering river, gentle trees. On the day of the unveiling, the nobleman and his guests gathered. The painter pulled back the curtain. A gasp went up. The mural was stunningly lifelike. But in the center of this serene landscape, the painter had included a small, detailed figure of a man running frantically down a path, his face contorted in panic. The nobleman was appalled. "You have ruined it," he cried. "This figure of fear destroys the entire piece of the scene." The painter smiled and said nothing. He walked to the wall, and with a few swift strokes of a different brush, he added delicate, barely there vines and flowering creepers over the running figure, as if nature had begun to reclaim the path. The figure was still there, but now it was obscured, integrated, almost part of the landscape. "You see," the painter said softly, "peace does not mean the absence of fear. It means fear is no longer in the foreground, shouting for attention. It has been seen, acknowledged, and allowed to be overgrown by the wider, greener reality of what is." The running man was the thought. The vines and flowers were the spacious, kind awareness that can hold it without being consumed by it. This brings us to the beautiful practice of metta, or loving kindness. Often, we believe inner peace is a solitary achievement, like building a fort and pulling up the drawbridge. Metta reveals it as an act of connection. It begins with a simple, radical act, offering wishes of well-being to yourself. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. For many, this is the hardest part. We are so accustomed to the inner critic, the taskmaster. Speaking to ourselves with the tenderness we'd offer a frightened child feels foreign. But this is the foundation. You cannot offer true peace from a parched well. Then, metta expands. You bring to mind a benefactor, someone who has been kind to you, and offer the same wishes. May you be safe, may you be happy. Then a neutral person, maybe the barista you see every day but don't know. Then, the courageous step, someone with whom you have difficulty. You are not condoning their actions, you are recognizing their fundamental wish to be free from suffering, just like you. Finally, you expand it to all beings, everywhere. May all beings be safe, be happy, be free. What happens in this practice? The walls of your fort dissolve. You realize your sense of peace is intertwined with the peace of others. The anxious mind is often a contracted mind, focused on a small, threatened me. Metta is an exercise in expansion. It moves your awareness from the claustrophobic room of your personal concerns to the open field of shared humanity. In that expansion, personal fears often lose their sting. They are seen as part of the larger human experience, not just your own private curse. The running man in your mural gets woven back into the landscape of common feeling. I knew a woman named Alara who practiced metta as a nightly ritual during a period of intense loneliness after a move. She felt isolated, a tiny island of anxiety. The metta phrases felt hollow at first, just words. But she persisted. One evening, as she mentally offered, "May you be happy," to her difficult neighbor, who played loud music, she didn't feel a surge of love. Instead, she had a simple, clear thought: he's probably lonely too. It wasn't sentimental. It was factual. And in that moment, her sense of isolation cracked. She was no longer a unique victim of loneliness, she was a participant in a widespread human condition. Her own ache didn't vanish, but it was now held in a larger, more compassionate context. The practice had softened the edges of her separate self, and in that softening, she found a curious comfort. Now, let's talk about trust. Not blind faith, but a deep, experiential trust in the process of life, and in your own capacity to meet it. We often live as if we are tightrope walkers over an abyss, convinced that constant vigilance and control are the only things keeping us from falling. Buddhism invites us to consider a different possibility, that there is a net. You may not see it, but it has always been there. The net is woven from the threads of your own resilience, the inherent wisdom of your body and heart, the support of the universe in its basic functioning. Your breath happens without your command. Your heart beats. Wounds heal. The sun rises. These are not small things. They are evidence of a fundamental holding. A story comes to mind about a traveler and a bridge. A man reached a deep, wide chasm on his journey. The only way across was a narrow, ancient rope bridge. It looked frayed, and swayed ominously in the wind. He was terrified. As he stood frozen at the edge, an old woman from a nearby hut approached. Seeing his fear, she said, "The bridge is safe. It has held for generations." The man shook his head. "I can't see that. It looks too weak. What if it breaks?" The woman nodded. "I understand. Tell me, when you walked the forest path to get here, did you worry about the ground breaking beneath your feet with every step?" The man was taken aback. "Of course not." "Why not?" "Because, the ground is solid. I trust it." The woman smiled. "You trusted the ground because you have experience of it holding you, step after step, your whole life. You have no experience with this bridge, so you fear it. But the principle is the same. It is made to hold. Your next step is no more perilous than your last one was. The danger is in the story you tell, not in the woven fiber." She then walked onto the bridge herself, and with a calm, steady pace, crossed to the other side. The man, shamed into courage, followed. With each step, his trust in the bridge, and in his own balance, grew. The chasm hadn't changed. His relationship to crossing it had. Our fear is often the fear of that first step onto the unfamiliar bridge. The practice builds the trust for that step. Each time you sit with an uncomfortable emotion instead of running, you take a step. Each time you respond with patience instead of anger, you take a step. You are building an experiential memory that you can be with difficulty and not fall apart. The net holds. This is deeply connected to the Buddhist teaching on dependent origination. Nothing exists in isolation. The bridge is held by the ropes by the anchors by the earth. Your peace is dependent on conditions, the condition of your attention, the condition of your heart, the condition of your understanding. The beautiful part is you can work with these conditions. You can strengthen the anchors of mindfulness. You can weave new ropes of compassion. You are not a passive victim of a rickety bridge, you are a participant in its maintenance and in your own crossing. Let me share an original parable about two gardeners and the wind. In a coastal village, two gardeners had plots side by side. The first, Eris, fought the sea wind. He built tall, solid fences to protect his delicate flowers. The wind would howl, strain against the fences, and often break them, leaving his plants battered and exposed. He spent all his time and resources repairing barriers, always at war. The second gardener, Lena, observed the wind. She noticed which native grasses and shrubs bent but never broke. She planted those. She created winding pathways that diverted the wind's force. She pruned her trees to let the wind flow through their branches rather than catch them like sails. Her garden wasn't full of exotic, fragile blooms, but it was lush, resilient, and alive with movement. When the great storms came, Eris's garden was often devastated. Lena's garden would sway, lose some leaves, but its fundamental structure remained, already adapted to the conditions. Eris gardened with resistance. Lena gardened with understanding. Our minds are like these gardens. We often try to build rigid fences against the winds of change, of unwanted thought, of difficult emotion. We exhaust ourselves. The Buddhist path is more like Lena's way. It involves studying the conditions of your own mind, learning its native strengths, and planting the seeds of qualities that can bend without breaking. You don't stop the wind of fear. You learn to grow willows instead of trying to grow rigid oaks in a hurricane zone. You cultivate flexibility, rootedness, and the wisdom of non-resistance. We must also speak of the stories we inherit. Long before we formed our own conscious thoughts, narratives were woven into the fabric of our being. The world is unsafe. You must be perfect to be loved. Rest is for later. These are not truths, they are inheritances, like furniture passed down and placed in the rooms of our mind. We walk around them, arrange our lives to accommodate them, rarely questioning if they are useful or beautiful anymore. We dust them and call them, just the way I am. A dear friend once described her breakthrough with this. She had a chronic, low-level anxiety about money, despite being financially secure. In therapy, she traced it back not to any personal experience of poverty, but to her grandmother's stories of surviving the Great Depression. The fear was not hers, it was a handed-down heirloom of survival. One day, she did a powerful thing. She visualized that fear as an actual piece of furniture in her mind, a heavy, dark, ornate cabinet. She thanked it. You kept my grandmother alert and resourceful. You served a purpose. Then, she mentally moved it. Not out of the house, but into a different room. From the central foyer of her daily consciousness, she placed it in a back study, where she could visit if needed but where it no longer dominated her entrance. The anxiety didn't vanish overnight, but its power diminished. It was no longer the defining feature of her inner home. She had rearranged the inherited furniture. The Buddha's teachings encourage this kind of inquiry. See your thoughts, your habitual reactions. Ask gently. Is this true? Is this useful? Does this lead to peace or to suffering? You have the right to redecorate. You can replace the heavy cabinet of inherited worry with the open window of present moment awareness. Let's explore another original story, set in a library. There was a librarian who loved order. Every book had its precise place on the shelf according to a complex decimal system. One night, a minor earthquake shook the town. No one was hurt, but in the library, hundreds of books were thrown from their shelves. They lay in piles on the floor, a chaos of spines and pages. The librarian arrived in the morning and nearly wept. The system was ruined. She began the daunting task of reshelving. But as she picked up books, she started to read snippets. A poem in a fallen anthology caught her eye. A forgotten history book fell open to a fascinating passage. A novel's opening line hooked her. For weeks, she worked, but her process changed. Instead of just returning books to their old slots, she began to create new, thematic shelves that had never existed before, journeys of the heart, whispers of history, echoes of the earth. The earthquake had destroyed her old map, but in doing so, it forced her to actually read the territory. The new library, when finished, was less systematically perfect but far more alive, discovered, and meaningful. Patrons found unexpected connections they never would have under the old rigid system. Sometimes, our inner earthquake, a loss, a failure, a great fear, throws all our carefully ordered beliefs and plans onto the floor. The immediate impulse is to rebuild the old order as fast as possible. But what if, in the scattered pages, there is a chance to create a new, more authentic, more interconnected understanding? The broken clock, the storm-shattered window, the fallen books. Each disaster, met with awareness, contains the seed of a deeper order, one not based on control, but on wise and compassionate reordering. This is the heart of awakening in the Buddhist sense. It's not about acquiring new, special knowledge. It's about wiping the dust from the window of perception so you can see clearly what has always been there. It's about realizing that the library of your mind doesn't need a more complex decimal system. It needs you to actually read the books with an open heart, and arrange them according to the wisdom you find, not the rules you inherited. Let's consider the body. We often treat it as a vehicle, a thing to be managed, a potential source of betrayal when it gets sick or tired. Buddhism emphasizes mindfulness of the body as a foundation. It's a direct, immediate anchor to the present. You can't breathe yesterday's breath or tomorrow's heartbeat. You can only be here, in this physical vessel, now. Try this, just as a brief experiment. Wherever you are, bring your attention to your right hand. Don't move it. Just feel it. Feel the subtle hum of aliveness there. The temperature. The weight. The tingle of sensation. Is it warm or cool? Can you feel the pulse of blood? For just 30 seconds, let your entire world be the universe of sensation in that one hand. Notice how thoughts may arise. This is silly, what's for dinner? And gently, without any frustration, just return your attention to the feeling in the hand. You have just created a small pocket of pure presence. The crowded marketplace of the mind is still there, but you've stepped onto the balcony of bodily awareness. The body is a gateway out of the story-filled mind and into the direct experience of being. I recall a veteran who attended a meditation retreat for people with chronic pain. He had back pain from an old injury, and his life had become a grim war against it. The first instruction was, counterintuitively, to bring mindful attention to the site of the pain. Not to analyze it or hate it, but to feel its exact qualities. Is it sharp or dull? Hot or cold? Does it have edges? He was skeptical, but tried. He discovered that pain was not a monolithic enemy. It was a constellation of sensations, a burning core, a radiating ache, a tight band of muscle. By mapping it with curiosity, something shifted. He wasn't in pain as an identity, he was experiencing a complex set of sensations. The suffering, the mental rebellion, the why me story, diminished, even though the sensations remained. He had separated the first arrow, the sensation, from the second arrow, his resistance to it. His body, once the battlefield, became the ground of his investigative practice. This relates to the concept of non-identification. You are not your pain. You are not your anxious thought. You are not your angry feeling. These are events that happen in the field of your awareness. You are the aware space in which they arise, play out, and pass away. It's the difference between being a character trapped in a stormy movie and being the screen upon which the movie is projected. The movie can be dramatic, scary, joyful, but the screen remains unchanged, allowing it all to appear. Your practice helps you identify with the screen, not the film. Now, imagine a mountain. Your mind can be like the weather on the mountain, sunny one moment, joy, stormy the next, anger, foggy with confusion, buffeted by winds of change. If you identify with the weather, you are in for a turbulent, exhausting life. But if you can connect with the mountain itself, the deep, silent, massive presence beneath the weather, you find stability. The mountain doesn't take the storms personally. It doesn't cling to the sunny days. It just is. Storms rage and pass. Sunshine comes and goes. Spring arrives, then autumn. The mountain remains, grounded, patient, immense. Your practice of sitting in meditation, returning to the breath, is the process of discovering your inner mountain. You are not trying to stop the weather of your emotions. You are cultivating the unshakability that can witness it all. There is a beautiful, original fable about a stream and a boulder. A young, energetic stream rushed down a mountainside, full of purpose and noise. It came to a huge, impassable boulder right in its path. Enraged, the stream threw itself against the rock, spray flying. Move! You are in my way. I must get to the valley, it seemed to shout. The boulder said nothing. It just was. The stream battered itself day and night, growing exhausted. Finally, depleted, it stopped fighting. It rested in a still pool behind the rock. In the quiet, it began to notice things. It noticed a slight depression in the earth to the left of the boulder. With the last of its energy, not from anger but from exploration, it trickled into that depression. The trickle found a way, then another. Over time, the stream carved a new, gentle channel around the boulder. It reached the valley not with a furious crash, but with a wide, calm, meandering flow. The boulder was still there. It hadn't moved an inch. But the stream's relationship to the obstacle had transformed from opposition to adaptation. Its force, once used for fighting, was now used for flowing. The obstacle became part of its journey, shaping its final, peaceful character. Our obstacles, fears, limitations, difficult people, are our boulders. We often wear ourselves out in direct opposition. The Buddhist path is about that moment of rest behind the obstacle. The pause. The mindful noticing. From that space of non-struggle, a new way often reveals itself. The obstacle hasn't vanished, but our way of being with it has, leading us to a wiser, more peaceful destination. We also have to talk about time. The mind is a time travel machine, and it's often broken, leaving us stranded in the past or anxious about the future. Peace exists only in one place, the present moment. This is not a cliché, it's a neurological and phenomenological fact. You cannot experience anything that is not happening now. Even a memory is a present moment experience of remembering. A teacher I knew had a simple practice. He would ring a small bell at random times during the day. At the sound, everyone would stop, take one conscious breath, and say silently, "Here." That's all. Not, "I should be here," just, "Here." It was a reset button for the time-traveling mind. You can create your own bells. The phone ringing. A red traffic light. The sound of a bird. Let it be a cue to land, just for a breath, in the eternal now. The past is a story. The future is a story. Here is the only real place you can ever be. The Buddha's emphasis on mindfulness is, at its core, an invitation to inhabit your life as it happens, not as you remember it or fear it will be. I'll share a personal anecdote about my teacher and a cup of tea. I was in a frantic period, preparing for a big teaching of my own, my mind a whirlwind of plans and anxieties. I made us tea, sloshing water, my movements jerky. I handed him his cup, my mind already 10 steps ahead. He held the cup, not drinking, just feeling its warmth. He looked at the steam rising in a slow curl. He did this for a full minute, in complete silence. I fidgeted, my thoughts screaming. Finally, he took a small sip, closed his eyes, and said, "Ah." Just that. Ah. In that moment, I was catapulted into the present. I smelled the tea. I felt the cup in my own hand. I saw the light on the steam. My whirlwind mind didn't stop, but it became background noise to the vivid, simple reality of the tea, the room, the ah. He had, without a word of instruction, demonstrated the entire teaching. Life is in the sip, not in the storm of planning for the sip. My frantic preparation for the future was robbing me of the only time I actually had to live, now. This is the practice of deep listening and deep looking. It's what turns an ordinary moment into a sacrament. When you wash a dish, be with the feeling of the warm water, the slickness of the soap. When you listen to someone, truly listen, without composing your reply. You are giving the ultimate gift, your full presence. And in that giving, you receive peace. Let's weave in another story, about a mapmaker in an uncharted forest. This mapmaker was famed for his accuracy. He entered a vast, old-growth forest with his tools, determined to create the definitive map. He carefully noted every giant tree, every stream, every rock outcrop. But the forest was alive. A storm would knock down a great tree, creating a new clearing. A beaver dam would redirect a stream. Seasons would change the undergrowth completely. He would return to a section he had mapped just months before and find it unrecognizable. Frustrated, he worked harder, updating his maps constantly, but he was always behind. He became so focused on correcting his representations that he stopped seeing the forest itself. He saw only discrepancies. One day, he lost his compass and his pack with all his maps. He was utterly lost. For the first time, with no tool but his senses, he had to be in the forest. He noticed how moss grew thicker on the north side of trees. He listened for the distant sound of water. He tasted the air for the scent of pine from the higher ground. He stopped trying to fit the forest into a grid and started learning its language. By the time he found his way out, he hadn't drawn a single line. But he knew the forest in a way no map could capture. He realized the true map was not on parchment. It was in the embodied knowledge of how to be in relationship with the living, changing land. Our minds are like that mapmaker. We try to create fixed maps of how life should be, who we are, what is safe. When reality changes, and it always does, we suffer, trying to force it back onto our old map. The practice of mindfulness is about losing the compass. It's about learning to navigate by the direct experience of this moment. The moss of sensation, the sound of intuition, the taste of the present moment air. The living truth is always now, and it's always changing. Your peace lies in learning its language, not in clinging to an outdated map. Finally, we arrive at the gesture we began with indirectly, the fearless heart. In Buddhist art, you often see images of the Buddha or enlightened beings with one hand raised, palm facing out. This is the Abhya Mudra, the gesture of fearlessness and protection. It doesn't mean there is nothing to fear. It means fear does not rule here. It is an inner posture. When you can sit with the full spectrum of your human experience, the joy, the sorrow, the fear, the peace, without being swept away by any of it, you are making this gesture inwardly. You are holding space for it all. You are the mountain holding the weather. You are the lake containing the waves. You are the screen displaying the movie. This fearlessness is born of intimacy, not of battle. You become fearless of fear because you know its texture, its impermanence, its empty nature. You've sat with it in the silent room. You've seen it as a cloud passing over the mountain of your being. You no longer believe its most convincing stories. You have made friends with the unknown, because you realize the known was always just a story anyway. So, as we begin to draw our evening to a close, let this be your practice, not as a heavy discipline, but as a gentle remembering. When you feel the grip of worry, remember the stream and the boulder. Pause. Rest. See if there's a way around, not through, the force of your struggle. When you hear the harsh inner critic, remember the potter's two students. Can you hold the clay of this moment with softer, more curious hands? Can you make peace with the wobble? When you are lost in the marketplace of frantic thought, remember the balcony. Take the staircase of a single breath, and rise above the noise to simply observe. When you feel alone in your difficulty, practice metta. Start with your own tender heart. May I be at peace. Then widen the circle. Connect your struggle to the universal human wish to be free from suffering. When change terrifies you, remember the library. The earthquake of impermanence scatters our old order, but in the scattered pages lies the chance to create a more authentic, interconnected understanding. And always, always, remember the mountain and the weather. Connect with the silent, stable presence within you that watches the storms of emotion come and go. You are not the storm. You are that which knows the storm. You have everything you need within you right now. The spacious sky. The still lake depths. The resilient mountain. The net that holds. These are not metaphors you need to build, they are truths you need to remember. Your attention is the key. Where you place it determines your world. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, let your attention be like a soft blanket, settling gently over your body, over your breath, over the quiet dark of the room. Let go of the maps. Let go of the marketplace. Let go of the need to wind the clock. Just be here. In the warmth. In the quiet. In the boundless peace that is your original nature, before any story began. The teachings have been shared. The stories have been told. The Buddha's hand is raised in a timeless gesture of fearlessness, and that same hand is in your own chest, in the courage of a single mindful breath. Thank you for spending this time in Monk's Temple. May you carry this sense of easy presence with you, into your dreams and into your waking life. Sleep deeply, and know that you are, and always have been, perfectly held in this moment. Good night.